Hello, and welcome to Hope Unabridged. I'm Casey Brennan.
I'm Angie Elkins.
And today we have a really awesome guest for you. Jamie Grace is going to be here to talk about finding quiet and clearing the noise. This season, gosh, it has been a season of noisy and anxious times, and we can so easily forget what it means to be quiet before the Lord. So today we talk with Jamie on what it means to slow down and hearing God's voice and being still. What is that like for you? Like, how do you find quiet?
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, as a mom of teenagers who are not quiet, it's hard to find that time. But I think it looks different for everybody. I know people who begin their day with just quiet and in the Word every single day. I like to do kind of bigger chunks of time in the Word. So like maybe on a Friday when I'm not working or whatever, I may spend more time, a couple of hours even. And then on those everyday mornings when I'm hurried and there's a lot going on, I usually just do a devotional or just kind of read in the Word. That's important for me. I mean, I have to make it a priority.
Yeah.
Me
too.
What about you?
I went through a season, I would say probably 2 years ago, where God would wake me up at like 2 a.m., between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. every single night for 6 months. And this was like right after my babies were sleeping. I mean, like we finally reached a place where I should be sleeping. They're not waking me up. It's, and it was just such an audible thing. Like it was like God woke me up. And so I just started using that time and like really taking advantage of the quiet because, as moms, like we don't have quiet days ever or quiet moments. So I would sometimes it would be 5 minutes. Sometimes I would stay awake for an hour. And I remember just journaling and writing and just being still and just using that space and time.
It is so refreshing when you start from that moment, in your day. So like we talk about how our days actually begin with rest. If you think of it that way, like your 24-hour cycle starts when you go to bed and you start your day with rest and then you start with quiet and then kind of ease into the day. It's so much better.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
So we're so excited to have Jamie here with us. She is a author, a speaker, podcaster, singer, songwriter. I think she's a Grammy Award nominee. All the things. And so she's going to talk about finding quiet and clearing the noise with us today. Hi, Jamie.
Thank you guys for having me. Glad to be here.
Hey, so we're going to be talking about clearing the noise and finding quiet. But first, I want to just tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah. So my name's Jamie Grace. I am a Georgia girl living on the opposite side of the country right now. But, I grew up in the South as kind of just think of all of the lovely stereotypes that you can of just like your quirky little Georgia family. I was homeschooled. I'm a pastor's kid. My big sister's my best friend. I grew up like wearing cowboy boots. And like the one thing about me actually that's not very stereotypical like Southern life is that I've never really been good at playing outside. I would go outside, but I would take a book or like an instrument. And my mom would be like, that's not why I sent you out there. Just come back in. So that's kind of a little bit about me. When I was 11, I faced some health challenges growing up. And so I have Tourette syndrome and OCD, ADHD, and anxiety. And that's really kind of shaped the lens in which I see the world, just through a lens of having mental health complexities, but also just choosing resilience as well. And then when I was 17 years old, we'll hop around a little bit, I became a teen star, if you will. That phrase kind of makes me cringe, but I'm like a teen star because of my YouTube videos. I've always been, like I said, just really outspoken and goofy and just a dorky kid. And so I was making YouTube videos and then the kids show found them and they signed me to their show and their tour. And ever since then, so that's been like 11, 12 years since that day. I'm making music full time and not during COVID, but traveling full time and yeah, so that's a little bit about Jamie Grace. That's what I'm up to these
awesome.
days.
Thank you. I want to go back to, you said you've been really open about, Tourette's and ADHD and anxiety. And I also grew up in a family where I think like three of us have aged. I'm from a family of six, so I'm the oldest of six kids. But ADHD was really prevalent in our home too. So what age were you diagnosed, and like, how did you feel about those diagnoses when you had them? And
yeah, so my symptoms really started around 9 years old. And also, just to be very like obvious of my ADHD and back up a little bit, super cool that there's 6 kids in your family. I hope like we have a bunch of kids as well. But yeah, so my symptoms started when I was 9 years old. And the main thing was the Tourette syndrome, which is a tic disorder. And so, I have like some physical tics, like arm stuff like I'm doing right now and shoulders. But the primary things were were that I just said arm and that was my hand. But the primary thing when I was 9 years old was like these arm twitches and leg twitches, my eyes blinking and like throwing my head down and like straining my neck muscles that were every 10 to 15 seconds and sometimes physically debilitating. So making it difficult to talk or even have a conversation. If we were out in public, I was oftentimes knocking things off of shelves in the store and things like that. So that was the main like kind of start for us going to the doctor, is because my tics were just out of control. And at first it just seemed like one of my quirky little things I was doing. And I think I kind of hoped that it was that too, just like a bad habit I picked up. But it really didn't take long for me to obviously tell at all that I couldn't control it. And so we started like, just good old pediatrician, like, hey, she's doing this thing. And then that went to specialists, and then some overnight hospital stays, a bunch of testing, a bunch of neurologists. And eventually about 2 years later, when I was 11, I was diagnosed with the whole shebang of things. And so my ADHD and anxiety, those are probably two things that I really didn't start to talk about a ton until I got older, only because the tics were so severe and my compulsive like thoughts and actions were so severe as well with my OCD, that those were just kind of the main focus. So I still have all of that stuff to this day. It's not as severe as when I was a kid, but I still battle that daily, and it's just a part of my story at this point. Yeah.
I love that. How was that like growing up with ADHD? Can you kind of talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. It's just a lot of times I think that I'll just kind of say like, oh, I get distracted a lot. And maybe that kind of gets, I don't know, minimized into like, oh, just getting distracted. But it's so much more than that. It's the inability to finish a thought sometimes. And so that can be really challenging as a child when you get excited and you want to tell a story, or you are I was homeschooled, but even in my schooling, if my mom were to ask me a question and I wanted to answer that question, to let her know that I had been listening or studying or whatnot. And then it's more than losing your train of thought, but it's almost like that thought is now being compressed or being, put like in another lane in your brain. Like it's not gone, but it's hard to explain. It's a constant, but one of the best ways that I could explain it, I told you guys before we started that sometimes I think I might be a 90-year-old lady. And so, we love our crafting. And I always think about like, if you have like a bunch of jewels or anything, like once I had some cowboy boots, done like bejeweled, like rhinestoned. Thanks, Caitlin. And, when you look at a bunch of like rhinestones, they all have these different glares and each glare has a different color. And if you hit a certain light in a certain way, it's almost impossible to keep your eyes focused on one of those elements of a rhinestone. So sometimes, not all of the time, but sometimes my ADHD, especially growing up, it just felt like an abundance of rhinestones and it was impossible to keep my mind on one of those things. It's, my mind is seldom empty, or quiet. It's even, like every single thing. Like I have a significant thought about every single element of your set right now. Because it's impossible for me to just see like, oh, two kind ladies sitting at a table. It's like, no, I've thought about your hat. I've thought about the pattern. I've thought about the color of coral. I've thought about how the color works great with Angie's lipstick, like every single thing. Like I've really learned like just to use it to my advantage. And just to understand like, okay, well, there are 18 million thoughts constantly happening in my brain. I don't know how to shut them down, but what I like to do is write songs. So I can write things in detail. I can write books in detail. I can make YouTube videos and talk about things. I can, I studied at the Groundlings, which is an improv school out in Los Angeles. And one of the things that I was complimented on was my character development. He was like, you come up with characters and their backstory so fast. And that's because I don't know how to make my brain be quiet, So it's the very things that are a hindrance a lot of times for me. I've just learned how to say, okay, how can I implement this in a positive way, for things that I want to do. But also just being realistic as well. Sometimes it's just acknowledging and sitting in the fact that I can't always use it to my advantage. Sometimes it's the fact that like, I get so distracted and I get so overwhelmed in my mind that I just cry for like a little bit of time, or I just kind of detach actually, and then it has an effect on my friendships. And then that's something new I got to work through. And so it's, it's definitely something that I've learned to use more for good than bad. Yeah. But it definitely can have, a negative side to it as well. Like, I mean, I'm sure you guys can tell of the lack of eye contact that I tend to make, because it's just kind of like, sometimes seems like words are just floating all around. I'm like, let me catch them real quick. So it has its not so great moments as well, but I just try to take deep breaths and naps on those days. Yeah. Stay with caffeine, and then like put it to use on the other days when I can.
And Jamie, you've lived like most of your life with noise, just living in the middle of noise. And you've had a lot of growth, obviously, because you've now written a book on finding quiet. So can you talk a little bit about that and how you've learned to clear the noise?
Yeah, most definitely. I will say that I didn't really notice that I had learned how to find quiet or clear noise in my life until I didn't have that access anymore. When I was in my early 20s, my teen years and then my early 20s were kind of the height of the fame, if you will. I tell my friends now, I'm like, I used to be bougie. Like I used to be like, I've got the bill. Now I'm like, let's not split this evenly because I got an appetizer and y'all turned up, so I used to be bougie. And so in that season of my life, is when like there were so many beautiful things and so many great things that came out of that for sure. But that was also one of the loneliest times of my life, and one of the most challenging times of my life. And that was the moment when I realized something's missing. Like, I don't know what's going on here. And what I was missing was that safe space. What I was missing was that ability to quiet the noise around me. When we talk about finding quiet, and I talk about this in the book about taking literal time during the day, 60 seconds, 90 seconds, to find quiet and to embrace what that feels like. But sometimes you can't literally shut all of the noise out. Sometimes it's about how am I recentering myself, even in the midst of all of the noise. And that's something with, my mom encouraging us to create and my parents being pastors and stuff, like that's something that my childhood had for sure. When my career first started on, the kids tour, I Shine, my mom was always with me. So I always had somebody to go and talk to and to debrief and to, if a concert was overwhelming, like she knew about it. So we would talk about it for hours. And then I had other friends on the tour. But as I got older, and like any person getting older, my mom's not around as much anymore. My parents are, letting me, what do you say? Flap your wings. I don't know. Like my parents are like letting me like do my own thing, obviously. I to realize that it was so much harder to do that by myself. And it got to a point where I had to make some intentional changes to make some things look very different than they had looked before. When I was 24, I made the decision to become an independent artist, and to just start doing things in a different way, in a much quieter way. And a lot of people, be like, well, why would you walk away from all that stuff? Like, why would you do that? And it was never about like leaving an industry or not being a singer. Like, it was never about that stuff at all. But it was about me making sure that I had that safe space, that I had that quiet space, that I was not adding any unintentional noise to the already magnified noise of my life. And that's a daily practice for each of us. It doesn't always mean making a major career change. It could be something as small as when you're stressed out with your family and your kids at home, not choosing to get on Instagram or TikTok, swipe around for 5 minutes, because all we're doing is now adding more noise to an noisy situation. Or it could be something as simple as, the election situation is frustrating for me right now, or I don't like that my neighbor has this political sign. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go put it on Twitter. Or you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go and, I'm going to choose to wear a shirt or a mask that represents my political candidate, and I'm going to wear it when I go ring their doorbell, and not saying like, don't like, rock the vote, but I'm just saying like, I'm like, what we have to make sure that we are intentionally asking, Lord, how can I make sure that I'm not adding noise that doesn't need to be here? I need to make sure that I'm not adding any unnecessary noise. Like, and don't get me wrong, like this is convicting for me as well. Like I would much rather just be like, it's so hard. Like I have this diagnosis, everything's falling apart. Like my daughter's 1.5. She's not potty trained. This is hard. Life is hard. I'm so sleepy. Like 2020, like, yeah, I get it. Like there's a lot going on, a lot of terrible things going on, a lot of tragic things going on. A lot of us have faced trauma this year with the loss of love, the loss of our job, loss of income. There is a lot going on, but we don't have to add to that noise. We can choose to find quiet. We can choose to simply be quiet. We can choose to put our phones down, turn off the news, turn off a podcast, and just say, God, how can you speak to me right now so that you can do your work in me from the inside out?
I love that. I can't help but think about your mom, because we had your sister, Morgan Harper Nichols, on just a little while ago, and she mentioned your mom several times. You've mentioned her several times. So I would love to kind of know what that was like. You talked about how she was encouraging of your creativity. I'm raising 3 creative kids myself, and so I want to hear a little bit about what your mom is like. Would you mind just sharing that?
Oh my gosh. Well, so a couple days a week, we take my sister Morgan. She has a son that's 8 days older than my daughter. It was not planned. It just is what it is. And so when I dropped off, I was really proud of myself this morning because I always show up at like 8:32, and my brother-in-law drops their son off at like 8:28. Guess who was early?
You won. Awesome.
Who was, So I was really proud of myself. You asked me to talk about my mom. I'm already not there. So we show up. My mom opens the door, and the first thing I hear her saying was, well, honey, you need your glasses, which is to my dad. And she comes out the door with like a bright yellow shirt on and this vertical striped floor length skirt with like every color you can imagine on it. And this like bedazzled leaf, like red, blue, and green earring. I'm like, Mom, you are watching your grandchildren. Like, why are you dressed for like the Oprah Winfrey show? Like, what is going on right now? Like, makeup done, hair done. And she just opens the door. Hello. I'm like, Mother, like, what are you doing? I mean, their house is just like it's colorful. It's bright. It is just a place it is a place of joy and energy. And it's like, you got to be careful not to tell her if you need anything, because then she'll do it. You know, like I casually told her last time I was there, I was like, Mom, you guys have a lot of cool snacks for the kids, but you forgot about me. Like you forgot about your, you're just thinking about the grandkids. You forgot about your kids. Then the next time I came over, she had my favorite chips on the counter, and my dad like made a whole big deal out of it. He was like, look, we've got the chips. She's just a wonderful lady. And you would never know until you start to talk to her. You would never know that she daily fights a chronic illness. She deals with chronic pain.
Wow.
But she is resilient and joyful. And the kids call her Goldie. So we call her Goldie now. And yeah, she's the best. We like her a lot.
Wow. That's not what I expected you to say about chronic pain, because I think it takes a special kind of person to push through some kind of issue like that in order to give and pour out the way it sounds like your mom has always done for you guys. So that's absolutely amazing. I would love to meet her.
She's great. Girl, you just say the word. She will be on this show and she'll be like, well, hey, like that's the joy of her life. She is great. We started implementing, we have a self-care rule in the family. She's not great at following it. Make sure that she does, because she's not allowed to see the kids if she doesn't do at least one thing on her off day for herself.
Oh, I love
she
that.
Send us a picture like, did you do your hair? Did you go, did dad buy your favorite, snack from the store? Whatever it is. She hates it so much. She gets so mad. She's like, I don't want to take care of myself. Like, I don't care. We're not bringing the babies over until you can prove that you took care of yourself.
Yeah, that you're taking care of her. I love that.
I love that too.
Yeah, that's great.
That's awesome. Jamie, are there any tips or tricks that you have that for somebody that might be living with ADHD, anxiety, or, Tourette's, are there any tricks or tips?
Yeah. The first thing that comes to mind is, it's going to sound like a very cliche Christian word, but just roll with me. It's community. And it's village. Like I have 14 degrees in trying to do this by myself, and I fail every time. You have to have your village. You have to push past that feeling of insecurity and embarrassment and pride, and ask either a mom, a dad, a friend, a neighbor, a mentor. And if you're not able to have those people like do something, then reach out to a therapist, a counselor, or even all of the above. If you need all of the above, you've got to have a safe space. I think about, my dear friend Lydia, and she is, she's my only friend and this isn't any diss to any of my other friends, but she's our only friend that has, I don't know how else to phrase this, but to say like physical barrier access. And what I mean by that is and that's not the right phrase at all. But what I mean by that is, when our daughter was about 2 months old, I was diagnosed with postpartum depression. And so she's our only friend that could actually show up to the front door, and no matter what I say, she's allowed to come in the house. And we have, of course, many other boundaries and conversations that she and I've had, because I know that there are times where, because of depression, anxiety, Tourette, whatever, I know that there are times where I'm like, I want to be alone. I don't need anybody. I don't want to talk. I just want to stay in bed. I don't want to get up. I don't want to eat. I don't want to go to the bathroom. I don't want to do anything. And you have to have those people in your life that can say, I know that this might not be what you want to do, but because I love you, this is what we're going to do. And of course, I have my husband and my family as well, but I just found it healthy for me to have someone that I don't live with, that also has that access into my life. And so, and I'm also in therapy full time. I say full time, 9 to 5 every day. I'm not, even though some weeks I might want it. I'm in weekly therapy. I love church. I will never tell anyone that anxiety and stuff just prayed away, because that's not necessarily how that works. But church is so beneficial. Music is so healing. Yeah. So putting positive music into your spirit, worship music, that kind of stuff is so beneficial. I know it feels so cliche, but oftentimes it's the cliche things that can be a very, very big help when it comes to our mental health and when it comes to our journey.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love that. Yeah. Where can people find out more about your book? Because I know you go into much greater detail and everything on all of that.
Yeah.
So
Thank you so much. I mean, the easiest place is Amazon. I love Amazon. So you can type in Jamie Grace Finding Quiet on Amazon. But if you're just itching for a signed copy, you can get that at jamiegrace.com. And I mean, our company is a little bit smaller than Amazon. So I'm not offended if you want to get your Prime Day, 2-day shipping. So whatever works best for you.
Awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. So, Jamie, we ask all of our guests as their final question on the show, where are you finding hope these days?
I know that it might sound very contradictory, especially considering my book and everything, but when I'm intentional about the amount that I'm using it, social media can be such an incredible place of hope. I've had to unfollow some pages. I've had to change the amount that I use the app. Yeah. The time of day that I use the app, I don't scroll through it before bed because my dreams get weird. But just get real. Where's the dinosaur come from? Oh, that's the next one. So it's there are so many inspiring people. I think about this one little girl named Nandi Bushnell, this little mixed race girl. She's, I believe that she's what identifies as black and white, but I don't want to say the wrong thing. But she's currently in a drum battle with Dave Grohl. She's an incredible drummer. And I'm like, where else can you get this kind of stuff? A little black girl, that's 10 or 12 years old doing a drum battle on the internet with Dave Grohl. So when I'm intentional about the usage and how and all that kind of stuff, social media is such a great place. And it really can. I mean, sometimes you'll see a scripture and you scroll by it. But if you see that scripture and you go, you know what? I'm going to dig into the word. I know we don't always do that, but we can do that. Mm-hmm. And so it can honestly be a really cool place.
I love that. It's great.
Yeah. I love that too. Jamie, thank you so much. Yeah. I feel like we're old friends and I hope we can connect again. You've been a great guest. So thank you.
Thank you guys so much. This was awesome.
Thanks for joining us today on Hope Unabridged. We'd like to remind you, if you're watching us on Good Life 45, you can also listen to these episodes everywhere you listen to podcasts.
If you're listening and you would like to see the filmed version of the show or any of our other shows, check us out on Good Life 45 or on our YouTube channel and our app.
We hope that something you've heard today really blessed you, and we would love for you to share this show with those you love. Just hit that share button on your podcast app or on YouTube and send it to a friend. With this program, we are finding hope in the unedited stories of our lives, and we want you to do the same.